needs of intellectually gifted learners, address their distinctive social and emotional needs, promote individual character development, and instill a lifelong love of learning. Our students will engage with leading innovative organizations in higher education, business, and science in order to empower them to make original and impactful contributions toward the elevation of South Carolina in the area of education, commerce, art, and science.
We're having a basketball game here tonight, so we're going to close this door. So we hear some
I thought this was going to be the largest board meeting I've ever had. I saw all those balls out there, and I was like, wow.
Let me see if this is Frank. I apologize. Hello, is this Frank? I apologize, everybody. Who does? I think so. Let me see. I have a copy of it. It's the number is 605.
Currently the executive committee.
475.
So
as far as the elected officials, Stacy's the chair, and Rob Byfield is the treasurer, and Jean is the secretary.
No vice chair?
No, not that I know of.
Did you guys have a vice chair before? You don't run with a vice chair?
Welcome. This service is provided by freecontrol.com.
Are there term limits?
Nope.
112-64.
Okay.
Next
Stop.
question.
Patty. Thank you.
You are the response.
I read the bylaws.
To re-enter your access code, press 2. There is one of
Okay, great. Apologize for that.
So these people were voted on by.
Okay, Keith's on the phone.
Half the board is voted on,
We're gonna,
and
you're on the
half
back
the
side of
board
the room
is.
here, so
Okay.
you
But
can't hear.
in
All
terms
right.
of the executive committee,
Well,
it was voted on by the board. and
are open for
So there's not
call this
been
meeting
an
to order
election
and
in
open
a
session.
couple of years.
Is there any public comment?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
In a previous PSA board meeting, it was suggested that teachers should coach students on standardized test taking. Gifted learners don't need coaching to take a test. They need content expertise to help them learn and understand content at advanced levels. They need to interact with those who have advanced degrees. We are a school for gifted learners governed by charter school law. We should stop wasting time worrying about how many certified teachers we have in the school and start working with our district and our legislators to make it easier to hire what the research says gifted learners need, content experts. This comes from people with advanced degrees. Many of the other gifted and talented schools have a majority of the instruction coming from people with advanced degrees in specific content. IMSA, Illinois Math and Science Academy, currently has 51% PhDs, 99% with advanced degrees, with salaries at the average with local high schools. I will say again, content expertise. The research shows that test scores will increase and students will be better prepared for college and career the more gifted learners interact with content experts. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is, we sent you the December financial statements. Our bond requirement is that we have a quarterly report to them, which is due this week, which would require us to have the October, November, and December, the last three quarter reports approved. And we reviewed all of them but December, so those were sent out to you. If you have any comment, we can have a comment about those or any questions about the December reports.
Is Rob going to be here to go over this?
He is not here, he didn't tell me he wasn't coming, so the reports came from Kitty.
Right.
And she said that we are still waiting for $85,000 per month comment. And Dr. Goff, would you like to comment on the December? I know you
So-
reviewed them with Rob.
The way things are working right now, everything is actually in good shape, but it's going to show up because the state has not adjusted our income at all for the 45th day. So we're still waiting, and we still don't have word when that's going to happen, but they do go retroactive and go back. So we'll get all the funding we're supposed to have gotten based on our numbers and the number of gifted and talented, number of academic need, and the number of free and reduced lunch, and then any special ed needs as well. So that's not, so we're getting money based on last year's numbers. But that happened last year as well, but they had that sorted out before December last time, so I don't know that anybody has an answer other than we'll get it eventually.
Well,
So no other concerns at all about the numbers that we're seeing?
We should actually have really good numbers when it's all balanced out, so.
Does anybody ever check with the State Department to find out exactly why this is taking so long? 45th day, what day are we in now?
We've passed the
half a year.
90th day and 100th day. Actually, our the district, Sierra Roper, is one who keeps us up in she's the communique for all the stuff that we've got going.
Does the money flow from the department to the chapter,
Yes,
I mean,
to
the
the
district.
to the
district, yeah.
district, and then to us?
Yes.
So they're the middle person, so,
Have they gotten it?
yeah.
They have not.
They
no.
have not, so
So
we have
they
not.
we get our report usually the first couple of days of the month, and as of February 1, the money has not been adjusted, so.
It's kind of tough for them to expect us to operate. I mean, we're on a shoestring anyway.
Yeah, there is, it's some stress for a lot of the schools in the district, to say the least, but I think states are, all of the other county schools are in a similar situation.
So I wonder if the other public schools, I'm sorry to delay this, but this is ridiculous. I wonder if the other the public schools that aren't charter schools, I wonder if they've received their funding.
I'm assuming they do, but I don't know,
I
because,
think we need to check. Could you check? I
Sure.
mean, you can call the Charleston County School District or Berkeley County School District or Dorchester.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you guys got your money in on the 45th day?
Yeah.
Now that we're in the 90th day?
going on to the 135th year graduate soon.
Yeah, so, yeah, please do that, because that's really, that puts us in a tough spot.
Sure.
And if you need help from us to call people too,
Yeah.
if you don't get a answer that you're satisfied with,
Yeah.
because we can contact
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you need a motion to approve, the financials
Yes.
for December? So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. You also received the quarterly report for the board from Melissa Kitty, who is our accountant. And you're gonna be getting this report every month from Melissa, as we now have a house payment to make, and it tells us where we have a number of covenants that we have to stay in. And you saw them listed from the two from Melissa. And the thing that, when you first saw the one that said, oh goodness, we're not meeting that one, she said, the debt ratio, and she said, that is we catch up over the year, and when we get the monies, and I think that was in the email I forwarded to you, that when we get the monies from, that is owed to us by the district, will be well in place for that, and we have to the end of the year to make that. So she thinks that we're in good shape for our debt ratio, and I'm looking for the other torch on that. And you have anything to add to that?
No, sounds right on target.
I'm looking for the little email that she sent.
I have it. This one she sent,
February 5th.
yes.
Okay. So we have the, did you,
Need a motion for approval?
yes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right, our next, we're going to have Dr. Daniel and Dr. Riley of the Citadel talk to us, but if you want, we could move forward and then when he gets here, start, or whichever you prefer.
Go ahead and move forward, and then when he comes, if it's appropriate, you can get him started.
Okay.
I'm just sort of supplemental to what he has to say.
I think that might be, is that him that just walked by? Thought I. Yeah.
Hi. Hey, Tim, Larry Daniel, my pleasure.
Dr. Daniel,
Just in
guess
time.
what? Perfect timing. You were just starting on the agenda. Dr. Daniel, Dr. Riley, if we could go round robin and introduce ourselves again. We're very pleased. Since we started the school, as it's in our mission that we'll work with higher ed, we've been going down to talk to the Citadel, your former provost, and with your president, asking to work with the Citadel and collaborate. So we're very pleased. Dr. Daniel came to our ribbon cutting a week or so ago and offered to work with us, which is great news, and we're really happy to have you here tonight. And he's going to lay out some opportunities, potential opportunities for us to work together so we can start a collaboration and think through some good things to do together. So we're very honored to have you here tonight. Really appreciate you being here. And it was a great time too, because Dr. Gott's going to be talking about our educational program and giving us an update about our annual plan, so we can, they can have the benefit of hearing Dr. Gott's presentation. So if we would, we could just go around and introduce ourselves.
I'm Tim Gott, and I'm principal here. Pleasure to meet you guys.
I'm Eddie Taylor. I work out of the base, of course, and I'm on the board.
Ken Ryan, I'm retired AV 30 years and start my own business, and I have a son coach.
I'm Jean Chandler, and I'm a retired educator in gifted ed, 35 years. So,
Shirley Denson, and I'm the Director of Government Relations at Palmetto Charleston.
David Diane, I'm with Marketing and Business Development, and I have a 7th grade and 4th year.
Victoria Gamble, I'm a teacher with Charleston County School District, and I have a student in middle school.
Thank you. Dr. Daniel, Dr. Riley?
Well, thank you, Ms. Lindberg, for the gracious invitation to come out. I will, first of all, apologize for my lateness. It seems I never time traffic right when I'm heading north from the Citadel, and between the rain and everything else was just a little tricky. I talked to Tom earlier today, and he said, I'm afraid I might be a few minutes late, and I said, well, I'll hold down the fort, and I appreciate him reversing roles and holding it down. I do have a story that the last time I came here, I was a week early, actually. I got the date mixed up for the ribbon cutting, and I came and I could see the school, couldn't figure out how to get to it because the road wasn't open yet. And I sent Stacy a note and said I would have loved to have come and couldn't find how to get there. And she said, oh, it's next week. So I seem to have had confusion of time anytime there's an occasion to come to see you folks. But we do, first of all, say congratulations on a wonderful new facility that you have. I know just from some of the conversations I've had with various ones, listening to Tim and to Stacy's great orations at the ribbon cutting. There's been a long road getting here, and you've been through some bumps in the road. It's always great to see success when you've had a lot of difficulties along the way. So congratulations to you for this wonderful step of getting to this piece of history of your school. We obviously, as an institution of higher learning, we're involved with lots of schools and agencies in the community. We reach out to our public schools, our charter schools, our private schools. It's important that we obviously make great relationships all the way around, because the people we're preparing to be school professionals are going to be working in all these settings. So we definitely, Tom can probably wax eloquent about a good history we've had of working with charter schools here in the area, including with our student teaching placements and other field-based placements and a host of other activities we've done. But I wanted to maybe just touch on a few things in thinking about how we may work with your school that might be of interest to you. We kind of just say, let's put a few things out there. We know some areas where we have some expertise as a faculty. We also know that we can't be everything to everybody, so we certainly don't want to come in and say, we'd like to be involved with you. If there's things that we want to do that you have no interest in, we don't mind you saying that. So it's great always to find common interest across institution of learning and K-12 schools. I do know, having looked at some of your reports that Ms. Lindberg was gracious enough to share with us, that you've got a good history here. Your test scores are certainly above the state average, which is something to feel really good about. At the same time, as with most schools, your test scores could be better than they are, and I'm sure that's probably among the discussion items that you've had, thinking as a board, thinking strategically, where do we want to be with those scores? And obviously looking at improvement of test scores, how you adjust your curriculum to deal with that, how you adjust other things you may do at the school. That may be an area where we could lend some expertise. We've certainly, a number of our faculty have had involvement with school improvement activities. We certainly want to help you think that way if we can be of value to you in that particular area. I do know that as a school focused on gifted education, obviously you want to look at how well students can achieve in a variety of different curricular areas. We would be willing, as much as would be feasible, to help connect you with colleagues across our campus. We do have a whole range of secondary education programs, and our faculty in education work very collaboratively with faculty across all of the disciplines, whether it be math, the sciences, English, the social studies, even areas such as art and physical education, and just about any area you can imagine that we would have faculty expertise at the campus. We could potentially help tie you to some of those experts that we have. We're also very interested in, as schools are planning for the future, if we can be a part of helping to review strategic planning documents that you have, giving input or feedback along the way, we certainly would want to be available to do that. I know Stacy and I had one conversation on the telephone about your strategic growth initiatives and deciding where you want to grow. And I know there's some interest in your growth at the lower grade levels that you serve. Would that be a wise decision or not? I mean, obviously that's an item that can be debated for a long time, but clearly those are areas where our faculty can help lend some expertise. We have several of us on our faculty, including myself, who have a background in middle grades education, and so there are some of us that are quite passionate about those younger adolescent kids and how to best serve them effectively. And in deciding who on the faculty to invite out, I could have invited a number of people, but I twisted Tom's arm just a little bit for two reasons. Tom has a great background in high school education. He's done work with a range of different disciplines, and including coaching in sports and physical education, but also because he's our field experiences director on campus. And I know that's potentially one way we could get plugged in with you as far as placement of our students, It's a great service to us, any of the schools in the area that are willing to place our students for early field experiences, pre-internships, internships, or other kinds of experiences that we may have. I wanted to give Tom just a moment to talk about, some of those kinds of things that we do. Tom, whatever you want to say about that would be great. So I'll just hand it off to you for a moment. So.
Okay. First, just a little bit about my background. I've been involved in education since 1967 when I graduated from that wonderful George Washington University. So this is my 49th year in education. 40 of those years have been spent in the high school classroom. So I have a passion for the school and for teaching. And my job at the Citadel is twofold. I teach courses, educational psychology, for example, at the graduate level. And my primary job is placing student teachers in appropriate settings for them to be in a setting where there's good support, good mentoring. And all of the students at both the undergraduate and graduate level are required to participate in field experiences. And that all leads up to their eventual placement as student teachers. And we've had a lot of success with our placement of student teachers. Over the past year, I'd say we have probably 98, 99% of our graduates are hired by school districts. So I think that the faculty, both in the content areas as well as in teacher education, are doing an effective job. Those are two things that we can provide you with. Students to come out and help during their field experiences, as well as student teachers, who bring in a lot of expertise. We all think that we're capable in some areas like teaching or technology, but when you get around younger people, as you find in the school, you realize how much you don't know, given what they're able to do today. And very fortunately, our students receive a lot of training in those areas. I noticed when I read through your report, I looked at your SAT scores, and they're good scores. I saw your ACT scores; they were all good. Although there were some areas where I thought there was some improvement that could be made there. The AP area, score areas, I saw that I think it was 29% of the students had passing scores that took the, and I see that as an area where there can be definite improvement. But another thing that kind of jumped out at me was that your retention rate of teachers is 61%. And given the experience of the faculty at the Citadel and our expertise, I think that's something that we might be able to help you with, and that in terms of getting a little bit more information as to why that rate is at 60% and not higher. Walking around the school, and I have followed Palmetto Scholars Academy from its inception. Actually, I used to send out monthly newsletters and all, and I followed those for a while. And I think you're doing lots of good things. You have a good focus on where you want to be, and I think that's important. Too often in education, we get sidetracked by what I call window dressing and taking shotguns approach to education rather than a rifle approach where you maintain the focus and only add things to your school that are going to be helpful in getting to what your mission is. Being a public school person for so many years, and particularly in Charleston County and Wando High School, I felt that we sometimes get sidetracked with window dressing and lose track of really what the mission is. And you have a very clear mission as stated at the beginning of this meeting. And I think we can help you with that. Not to get into a philosophical discussion about your comment area, but I think that you can have a great deal of expertise, but not be effective in transmitting that information to the students. And so I think that being, having experience in how to communicate what you know to students in a variety or differential way can be extremely effective. And I think those are things from the School of Education that we can help any school with. But I guess the main thing is trying to figure out, what are your needs, what do you perceive as your needs, and are those things that we can help you with.
And thank you, Tom, and I'll add just a couple of other things, and then, certainly we appreciate the time, and we'll shut up for a moment unless you want to engage with us further. But I think there are some natural things that would build a linkage of the Citadel with your school, with Palmetto Scholars Academy. You intentionally looked at a property here on the military base. And our link to the military as a military school, and many of our students go into the military. I think there's a natural linkage there that we would have with you. One of the first things I did when I started learning about the school, I went and said, okay, who's on their faculty? And I'm looking through and I see Citadel graduate, Citadel graduate, Citadel graduate. So obviously our success is yours, or our lack of success is yours. If you're doing such a good job of hiring our graduates, whatever you're doing right or wrong, we're going to have to take credit or blame as the case may be. So obviously our own products of our institution are helping you to move your mission forward, and certainly that builds a strong linkage as well. And the third thing would be, I think as Tom indicated, you're very clear with your mission. You're very focused. We like to work with people that know what they want to do, and so we have a clear interest in your institution. We work with many schools. We can't promise everything to everybody, as I said earlier, but we certainly would have an interest in finding out more and where your needs are. The one thing I'll just say is sort of an aside. Obviously, you may find someone either on our faculty in education or in general at the Citadel that you just build a very close affinity with, and you may really want that member of our faculty to come and work with you more closely. And we certainly welcome that. We encourage all of our faculty. In fact, part of their evaluation is service to the community, so we expect that. At the same time, we know that faculty time is valuable, so there may be cases in which a faculty member would expect to be compensated for their time. So just sort of there's a certain amount of volunteer time, a certain amount of paid expertise time. So you just have to be aware of both of those. But if we got involved in a particular project, we would be very, very clear from the beginning. If there were any expectations of compensation, we'd expect that. If it were something we were doing as part of our service community, we'd make that clear to you as well. And I know that sometimes you're getting involved with another group, you're saying, okay, are they looking to make a lot of money from us? And that's not necessarily what we're attempting to do, but just to be clear that faculty time is valuable, and there may be cases in which that would be a part of it.
Sort of along that same line, that I noticed you have a heavy emphasis in science and math that you're interested in. We have a really top-notch director of our STEM Center who is really, this is her first year that she's come from NC State, where she's been involved in national STEM projects. And there's always opportunities in STEM areas right now for grants and things like that we would be more than happy to work with you guys on and help.
And grants always are, typically will fare best if there's partnerships that go into them. So working with K-12, with perhaps a community partner, there's some great opportunities for STEM funding, and we certainly would be very interested in any ideas you had there.
Would you, and I just spent 3 hours this Saturday on the foundation online at the library looking for grants, and there's zillions of them.
Yes.
But the biggest challenge may be, if we were to pick some area that we would like to pursue a pilot program from DOE or any, Gates Foundation, whatever, we'll have kids running around looking for Zika or something like that. Could you help us write the grants ahead of schedule? Because I know that's a fairly intense process there, but the grant money itself produces the program. And so that seeding the grant writing process, is that something you could help us with?
Absolutely. We'd probably need a faculty champion on our side, but if you had a really good idea, we could probably help find a faculty champion. We do have our foundation office has 2 full-time grant writers, essentially is what their job is. So they specialize in the kind of things you're talking about, and some of our faculty have written lots of grants, and they themselves have quite a bit of expertise.
Yeah, I think I'd be more interested in the grant writers, because they know the database and they know where to look, and
Sure.
that's something that we can certainly use help on.
So the answer is basically yes.
Okay.
We would have some expertise there.
Great.
Question, comment?
Yeah, just thank you very much for your interest in PSA. Gosh, I'm amazed, because I know you guys are both busy, and we're really proud of this school, but we will be the first to tell you we don't have all the answers. So to have someone of your caliber come on board and say, we want to help you, that is phenomenal. So thank you very much for that. As you were talking, I did note that you made some comments on some areas of concern, and we have those same areas, obviously. But I'm just curious, would you, with your student-teacher placement, because of the state law allows us to have a certain percentage, like 25% of our teachers, our faculty, who are non-certified. They're experts in their field, which is fabulous. So would you have any concerns, or I don't even know if the state would allow you to place a student teacher in a classroom with a non-certified faculty member?
The state law, the teacher has to be certified.
Yeah.
They have to have a minimum of 3 years teaching experience.
Got it.
And if they're not adept trained, then we would, along with the college and Charleston Southern, we train them in the 2 training programs. And that's the 3 criteria right there.
I thought there was something, but I wasn't certain. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow.
If we have a teacher that comes from out of state, expecting reciprocity with their certification, do they not have to go through the in-depth process anyway in that first year?
If they are becoming through the South Carolina certification process, and your teachers are hired through Charleston County, you hire them, but they're.
No.
We're in South Carolina Public Charter School District, and we're governed by the charter law, which enables us to have up to 25% uncertified teachers if we choose, only 25%.
I saw that in your, but I wasn't sure where that money comes from, because I think if it's state money, then they do have to go through the first year of provisional.
Right. Which involves the
in-depth process.
elaborate process that we need to be doing here, is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Again, I'm not quite sure how it carries over to the DEP program and the charter school works, but I know that we do a lot with the James Island Charter, and their teachers go through the DEP process. But I'm not sure if they're governed by the same board that you are.
They're in the CCSD district.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with your unique board.
This is a very unique opportunity. for this school, as you probably know. I mean, it is amazing, the flexibility that's afforded PSA. And it's unbelievable opportunity for
If we were
for
going to look
everyone.
at, you know, down the road of placing students out for field experiences as well as doing their internship, that's something that we could look at, because I don't know all the rules.
And the other piece of that is even if you did not have an adequate number of teachers that met the state requirement for internship supervision, we could certainly do other kinds of field experiences here at the school. I mean, there are, mega experiences that our folks do. The advantage, hopefully, is not only, we're certainly receiving from the expertise of the faculty at any site where we bring our students, and the exposure to the children at the site is an invaluable thing for our students. We're hoping in most cases, as Tom said, that our students are also going to bring the newest ideas that we're teaching on campus. Everybody should be learning from everyone in a very good learning environment. So we do often get comments back that our students brought in a new learning method, a fresh perspective on something. Just the energy sometimes that young people bring into the profession is certainly appreciated in many cases. So we do think we could offer a lot to you. Selfishly, we know that getting good field-based experiences is great for our students, but we also feel that we can offer something to you by our students, and our faculty who are out here supervising those students are also interacting with professionals regularly. I'll say another thing about our faculty. Everywhere they go, they're going to talk to whoever's working in that school. And we recently made a trip to Belize, of all places, and we're doing some international work there. And two of my faculty did a workshop at one of the Belizean schools we visited, and it's been about 5 months after, and the two of them are still maintaining email contact with the teachers that were in that workshop. So they're getting questions about their teaching methods and things that are going on. And so that's just the nature of our faculty. We are a high service group. We can't do everything, but we do reach out to anybody we have contact with. We're there for the long haul. I guess would be a good way to say it.
There are some alternative routes toward like certification in the state for those teachers that you have that aren't. And they waive student teaching based upon if they have a minimum of 3 years of teaching experience. So if you had people that were not certified here who wanted to be certified, they wouldn't have to go necessarily through the whole process of going through internships. That they could have that waived for them based on their.
And we often recommend, we have people come to us, should I get your program? We often recommend some of them go through the PACE program, which is the alternative certification program here in the state.
Is there any more questions? Well, we certainly appreciate you coming out tonight and making time in the evening and braving the Dorchester traffic. I think that it'd probably be good for us to discuss as a board how we could start working together in a process and a system for that, and possibly have another meeting with you to discuss if that would be okay with you. Get input with faculty and the board. Does that sound like a good plan? We can contact you within the next week or two? Sure. Any other suggestions? Thank you. Well, we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for
And
inviting
we
me.
welcome you to stay. Right now, Dr. Gott's going to give us a review of the annual plan and analysis of our report card data. And Dr. Gott, I'm going to get it all over the phone again. I just wanted, because Keith, we lost Keith, so I just wanted to let you know what I was doing while you were calling.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Well, hi all. Guys, thanks for being here tonight. So,
over the last year and a half, as I've come to know the school, the report card over, previously, we had 100% on standard, we had A of excellence, which is a fairly rare thing in the state to have that 5 years in a row. But when I looked at it, and I come in from an experience of 31 years of education, but more specifically, I worked for the Department of Education in Kentucky to deal with schools that were struggling. And I had the opportunity to audit schools all across the state, including Louisville and Lexington, and most from one end to the other almost. I also was asked to assess very successful schools and try to do the comparison of what is the difference? What is it that makes a school successful? So as I spent my time doing that, I also then had the chance to help start the Gatton Academy of Math and Science, which had a different focus, a different approach. And when doing that, I've come to a couple of thoughts, I guess, or maybe a philosophy on how to approach data. So I trained some other leaders for a while, and then I was a consultant for many districts as they were trying to assess their data. So I'm going to kind of take you through the process that I would take a school through, and that is called what I call the triple loop approach. Triple loop is, okay, you get a whole pack of the data. What does it mean? How do you approach it? And so one of my mentors, a guy named Frank DeCinci, taught me that when you look at data, you're looking for anomalies or things that stand out the first time through. He would call that a red flag analysis. And so I kind of modified it to say, what are the red flags and what are the green flags, for lack of a better comparison, is what's good, what's not good, and that's your first loop. You're not really looking for anything else at that moment, just as a group looking at what stands out to you. The second loop, then you go back and then you look at the roots of it. What is causing the scores that you're seeing or the anomalies that you're seeing? And he talked about looking at external and internal factors. For instance, an external factor could be on the day that the test was given, was the classroom environment a safe and secure environment? Was there distractions? Was there good heating or cooling at that time? Strange things, but just as the leader of the building or the faculty of the building, we assessed, did the process go well? Then also looking at factors like, were the students then internally, were they given an opportunity to learn the content? Were they given the opportunity to learn the testing technique that may have been used in this particular case? And fundamentally, then you just try to take your best shot at finding an answer for why the data was what it was. And then the third loop is then, what are you going to do about it? If you're scoring in the toilet, then what's your next step? If your scores are high, but they're not as high as you want them to be, then what are you going to do about it? So, if you will, and I don't know if you all have a copy with you, I brought a couple extras, but the... Which one?
2015, is that what?
2015,
Okay,
high
is
school.
anyone? Yeah.
So there's a middle school and a high school one. There's one of the middle. There's the next one. You guys share that. Again, I sent a link out just a little bit ago that you can go directly to it. But, so, what we did as a faculty recently was the same process. Again, because when they first come out, each teacher kind of take a look at it, try to figure out for themselves what they're seeing. So I'll hold it up because visually it's what I want you to see more than anything else.
That's the middle school.
This is the middle school one, yes. The test given last year, where most of this data has come from, we had what's called the Aspire test, which was an ACT-based test. And then there was the PASS test that was given to our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in science and social studies. So when you look at the PASS test, it is a South Carolina specific test. And so there's no national data for it, but it's actually on page 3. I don't know if it has a number or not. It looks like this. And you'll notice then that there are 3 stages: exemplary, met, and not met. And so with just the state data, you see exemplary in science, 56.1. Exemplary in social studies, 73.6. But if then you add to that the number that met the standard, then you'll notice that really ultimately only 4.2% of the whole school in 6 through 8 didn't meet the standard. And then in social studies, only 1.4% didn't meet the standard. So first loop, that may stand out to you, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. But what I like about the Aspire, and despite the fact we're not going to use it anymore, it is a national test. And it allowed us to really norm ourselves with things outside of South Carolina. And while we didn't get national data, the type of test was more geared toward that. And again, notice then, and I like the fact that the colors are blue and maroon, which kind of matches us, that you'll see that top bar is us. Compare that to South Carolina public charter as a whole. Middle schools with students like ours, which basically students with similar demographics, and then how we compare to the state. And if you'll notice, in almost every category, the amount of blue in English, for instance, is amazing. The amount in reading is still incredibly strong. The amount in terms of math is incredibly strong. And then you see writing, and I'm going to come back to that one. But that's, again, looking at the data, what stands out to you. If you group the blue and the burgundy, you'll see, again, the vast majority in everything except for writing is in that category. And right below the bar, you'll see, again, the number of students who met the standard, 97.6, 84.0, 81.1, and then the 54.7. Now, previously, I don't know if I handed these out. Let's see if I can find it real fast. I gave you a sheet that looks like this, and this was just a straight comparison of the percentages of met versus not met with the state. And this is where I think as a school, it doesn't do us any good to compare ourselves to the state. You get a good, nice feel for it for just a second, and then realize, I don't think we want to compare ourselves to the state. That's why we exist as a charter school. But when you do look at middle schools that are like us, even the other charter schools, in every category, we are statistically significant to almost 1 standard deviation above everybody. And that says a lot in 2 or 3 areas. One, it says that our curriculum, our teaching is on target, that the students are getting the content that these tests are, for the most part, addressing. It also says something about our kids. We're a gifted and talented school by definition, but we're only 70% identified gifted and talented. But when you look at, again, the number of exemplary, that's off the scale. And that, to me, is very, very exciting. Now, let's talk about the writing for a second.
I'm sorry, real quick, but when it says middle school with students like ours, Who are those? What's the measure?
I don't know.
What are they?
Yeah, it's just people that have similar demographics to, you know, maybe our percentage of minority, our percentage of free and reduced lunch. Yeah, so just whatever demographics we kind of line up with.
Okay.
Now, when I look at writing, and the first time I saw this, and everybody else was very frustrated with it as well, is why is there such a big difference between English, reading, and math, and then the writing score? So this is where we do the second loop, and to use this as an example, what happened in writing? What was different this year? What factors were involved? And one of the biggest factors that we've come to understand is that the students never took this test before. The writing was a timed prompt, and they've never ever had to do anything timed. The past test is all the time in the world for them. And so all the testing our students had done up to this point had been non-timed. But then again, look at the pattern as the charter school, the other middle schools, and the statewide charter of where their scores are as well. Look at the in need of support. That percentage for us, that 12, that's, you know, that's actually the number of students, I think. So out of all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, we had 12 that were really struggling to not meet the standard according to this test. The close means that they're statistically close to the standard, and given a different day, they might have been on the other side of that. And then again, look at our 11 and 105. And again, visually, when you go down, you can see that our blue and our burgundy is much stronger than any other comparison, and it should be. But even with that said, that's not good enough. So if our students are going to have to take time writing, and I don't think we are actually, unless the new test is going to include that, but I haven't seen the blueprint for the new test yet. We have 2 pieces to it. There's a Terra Nova that we have to take multiple choice, and I think the new one is called South Carolina Ready, or does that sound right to you guys? Which is basically going to be a state constructed test. It may pull from some national sources, but it's still just going to be a state test. So from this, we're a feel for our need for professional development, particularly in terms of curriculum, is writing, and more specifically, writing across the disciplines. What does it mean to be a good writer in English? And what does it mean to be a good writer in mathematics? What does it mean to be a good writer in science versus one in arts and humanities? And while I believe very strongly that we have a really powerful writing focus in our English language arts, maybe not so much across the other subjects. And so that's something we're going to explore, and we're looking at bringing in a national leader in that to come and share some stuff with us this summer. But that, again, is the process that we go through when we look at these. Now let's talk about the high school for a minute.
Yes, sir. Just quickly, so, because I was comparing it to the School of the Arts, and the trend is similar too. Do we have any, could we get any data on academic magnet? The reason why I mention that is because that's the found difference in the high school.
Yeah.
There is the middle school one?
They don't have a middle school, it's a high
They don't
school.
have, they don't have the middle
They're
school.
9 to 12.
So again, going back, we look at the state data, and then again, we look at comparisons. So I know it's been a concern as we look at ourselves against Academic Magnet, the governor's schools, School of the Arts, because those are the top performing schools in the state. When you look at our data, again, looking at the second page then our high school folks take the ACT, the work keys, and the end of course assessments. And then if any student on an individual level wants to take the AP exam. Not all of our students take the AP, even if they take the AP class, because it's students are responsible for paying for that. If a student needed support on that, we gave them that this year. And the vast majority of those kids did take it, but we haven't been an AP school. We're not driving that AP curriculum. But when you look at the ACT scores of our juniors, now these are kids that are seniors this year, the composite for our class of 20 at the moment is a 23.7. Now you'll notice that the district and the state are at 17s. If you look at national average, the national average is 21, or actually 20.7 usually. So despite that, we're 6 points higher, but what does that mean? And I invite you to think of the ACT scores in sixes. 1 through 36 is the score that you can get. The average score used to be 18, now they're shifting it around to 19 and 20 depending. But if you just look at 18 and then do sixes, 18 to 24, 24 to 30, 30 to 36. That's categories. But that's not equal, that's bell curve. So the 18 would be like the 50th percentile, but the 24 is like the 84th percentile. And then the 30 is like the 98th percentile. And then going up into the 36 is the top 2%.
And what is Clemson asking for, 29?
No, because we got kids who got in that didn't have that.
It
I
is
think
29?
it's,
Is it, no, we got kids.
yeah, I don't know right off the top of my head, but I do know it's a sliding scale depending on what the student's GPA is. But usually 24 to 25 is what the state schools have been looking for, but I'll get a clarification of that.
I can look it up on that.
Okay. So when you go across the board, 23.7, 24, 23.7, 24.9, 21.9, I would, again, ask you to look at that in terms of the percentile score, that our kids are in the top 75 to 80% of everybody in the United States, not just South Carolina. Because you can see we're literally a whole standard deviation or more above the state. Now, when we compare ourselves to academic magnet, and I was part of a selective school previously, I got to choose the best students in the state of Kentucky. And so the average ACT of the kids I selected as sophomores was a 30 on the ACT. That's the top 2%, top 5% of kids. Now, academic magnet has that same ability to select the best students from this area. So while we have a curriculum that attracts really good students, we don't get to select them. And so to compare to them is really inappropriate in the sense that it's kind of like, all right, you get to choose the best basketball players from Clemson and University of South Carolina, and then I'm just going to take everybody else from the state who wants to play basketball, and they've got to want to play basketball, but I'm maybe a decent coach, and I can bring out the best in kids. But when you compare the two teams, there's a very defined disadvantage in that.
The interesting thing is the academic magnet high school only requires an 85th national percentile score, and you write an essay.
Right.
Pretty much that's it. So if you're letting kids in that are only scoring at the 85th national percentile,
But that's not their average though. When you look at their
that's
average.
the criteria to get in. So they are accepting kids that are not necessarily that gifted.
Well, but we're accepting kids that are not gifted at all. we got kids who score in the 40th and 30th percentile. Because this is an open charter. Any kid who wants to come. So when you've been looking at the data, Gene, you know that we'd be able to pull up to 70%, but the original group is usually about 55 or 60% until we go through that.
We're not exact schools, just like when you showed us data comparing us to the average of South Carolina. You knew we weren't an average school. We understood that as well.
Right.
It's a data point for us to consider. And the academic magnet is another data point for us to consider. I think their gifted and talented percentage is at 83%, we're at 71. So we know there is some difference there, but also we've got to understand there's always things that we can learn from the other top schools that we're in the community. They serve the same community that we do. Also, they are a school that our parents and our students consider going to instead of here and back and forth. So it's not saying we're exactly the same as them, but they're another school for us to learn from. Like Dr. Daniel said, we all learn from each other.
Sure.
They're our competition.
Right.
They're our competition.
And maybe that's true. They're the only school in the area with School of the Arts that compares to what we're doing.
Right.
And so that's,
Rollins and Buse.
I'm sorry, I was talking high
Middle
school, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to say that we don't look at best practices, but I'm saying we're a different animal than them. But with that said, our kids are performing at an incredible level as compared to national data. And another way for that to show up is you don't have this yet, let me pass this around. Recently, the PSAT scores came in. Make sure I have my originals on here somewhere. And you'll get a chart that looks like this. And so when the grade 10 takes the PSAT and the grade 11 takes PSAT. Now, PSAT used to stand for preliminary SAT, and that used to be Scholastic Aptitude Test. Those things have morphed, and I don't even know that they don't ever call it anything but PSAT now. But when you look at the scores, again, this test is given to all the college-bound students across the United States. And when you look at the score, when you see this 1063 and 906 and 892 and 931, what that represents is a score based on an 800 on the math and an 800 on the verbal. Now, they call it different things now. One is something reasoning, critical reasoning, and maybe it's still called verbal, but it's focusing more on writing as well. But if you took the test and you got a perfect score, you'd have a 1600. The average score is usually around a 550. And so when you get to doubling that, that's about 1100. Our juniors scored 1132 compared to the national of a 1008. The state, as you can see, is right there with the national average in the grade 11. Our grade 10 kids, who are 2 years out of that content for all practical purposes, still scored 1063, and the national average being a 931. Now you can go down and look at the comparison then of if we have enough students taking the test, when we can compare in other demographics. Going over to the other page, now you'll see where it says 74% and 81%. Our students met the benchmarks as defined by PSAT, College and Career Readiness, basically the SAT standard. 74% of our sophomores have already met that standard. 81% of our juniors have met that standard. Now, with that said, that also means 26% of our sophomores didn't meet the standard, and 19% of our students that lose them. So that's where we as a staff are able to go in and say, okay, who are the students? Because we know, we get individual reports, and we can identify exactly who that 19% or that 26% is. And we can basically work with that family to do things to help them reach a higher level. Now, here's the thing that I want you to understand too, and I believe I've heard this from you all as well, and this is our mission. As a school for gifted and talented, and our curriculum is reaching that, we are going to get students into our building who are not appropriate for that level of acceleration and depth. And so we're a whole year ahead. By the time they get in 8th grade, they're taking all freshman level classes for all practical purposes. So there are students who shouldn't be doing that. It's just not the appropriate time for their development. It may be that they have strengths in other areas, but there are some kids who are in our school because we didn't get to select them. We are taking them and giving them a great opportunity. But here's the neat thing for me. We're 70% gifted by definition. The 30% that's not are sometimes scoring just as high as the kids in the 70%, and then some. Out of that, there's not the students who don't make it here, not all of those are that 30%. Some of them are coming from the other, but reality is the kids who are coming to this school are rising up no matter what they're identified as. And so I think while we know there are things to improve on, for instance, when you go down and look at the, I'm not sure if the AP scores are on, they're even on this. But our AP scores, for instance, in social studies, were not all that strong. In our social, one more time. Probability and statistics class, they weren't that strong either. And that's a red flag for me. I think there's something we need to look at that from what's our focus in those classes and how should we be aligning with that curriculum. And as an AP course, we're choosing to do that, then we need to be closer to that. But I don't want to trade off teaching. When you look at the overall scores on the kids who are scoring the top on ACT and they might not pass an AP exam, we got to also be able to measure what are we giving kids that doesn't show up on a test score. You know, I don't want anybody in the world to truly measure me based on my ACT, my GRE, my driver's license test, and all this other stuff. Those are tests to show at that moment where we are in that moment with that curriculum. And then we learn from that. But I don't want to identify, you know, the Aidens of the world over here by his ACT score. We also have at this school, and what is drawing so many people to this school, is a culture of acceptance of the differences. When we look at our mission, meeting the social and emotional needs of our students. Now, we're not meeting every student's needs. We know that. And we're trying to do more of that. Want to do more training this summer on that. But when you look at the other schools, and particularly in my life experience, there's very few schools in the United States that have the culture and community that we have at the moment. Because, again, kids are feeding off of that desire to learn, and more importantly, that acceptance for who they are. We've been talking about the overexcitabilities that Dabrowski, who's a Polish psychologist and education leader back in the 20s and 30s. He did this thing on dealing with intensities, and he talks about the 5 overexcitabilities. Our kids are case studies of those when you read the characteristics. But by being here, that no longer becomes a an ostracizing point, it just becomes a connecting point. And our kids, when they're out playing or they're in the classroom, we're not struggling or dealing with the same kind of issues that most schools deal with. For instance, as a high school principal, or as a high school counselor actually in times past, we had the responsibility to do bathroom duty every day. Because every day, somebody was in that bathroom smoking, or someone was smoking weed, or someone was selling drugs. I, in the last year and a half, have never seen a cigarette on this campus. Even in the old place, where it was likely, we've had maybe one or two concerns about students who might be using drugs off campus. It's never, that I know of, it's never been on our campus, because our kids are not interested in that being a part of their school. They might be interested in the outside of it, but the culture of our school enables us to minimize that. Now, our kids aren't perfect. You all as parents know that. They've had their moments. But when it's all said and done, and here's the part, I guess, and maybe this is why I'm so defensive. Yes, we can improve test scores. But I never want to be a part of a school that focuses on test scores, because I did that for 30 years before this. And it didn't change the culture of the school, it changed the structure of the school. But I've come to understand that you don't change kids' lives by moving their percentage up a point or two. You change kids' lives by encouraging them to discover who they are and then enabling that. So we talk about our pathways to distinction. And so we're working on that. And it's growing every day in this building of what kids have the opportunities to do. A great example is Gabe Boyd. Gabe is an intelligent young man, but he's a kinesthetic learner. He hates sitting in class. And his grades are not phenomenal, they're not terrible. But he's doing an internship right now through Trident Tech. And they are presently, he is working with a mechanical and industrial mechanical business. I forget the name of it. But he's learned to weld, he's learned to drive a forklift, he's learned to jackhammer. But more importantly, he's learning the culture and aspect of a business, because he's also building robots here, and he's also doing SSEP and doing scientific research. So he's broadening his horizons, because that's a path he wants to take. Now, I don't know what his ACT score is going to be, and I'm not sure learning to do a jackhammer is going to change that ACT score. But he's a better student and he's a better person because that's the pathway he chose.
But Tim, and I hate to even bring this up, but I totally get what you're saying. And you have to identify those students who aren't going to be college material, so to speak. They're going to develop a skill, a life skill, and go out and get a wonderful job, I'm sure, with all the jobs that we've got, coming to this area, and they're already here for that matter. But I think parents have an understanding that their kids have to score high to get into these colleges that they want. So you just gotta, I know you realize you've gotta have a plan to get those kids there.
Sure.
And I'm not saying what was suggested earlier, teaching a test. I would never, there's been lawsuits brought against people in this area for doing that. And they've been charged and found guilty of it. So never would we ever wanna even consider something like that. But kids do have to learn how to test.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying we don't,
test.
but I'm saying that the results we're seeing, even last year's graduating class, whose test scores were actually higher because they took it as seniors. I think we were at a 24 point something with the seniors. Every one of those students qualified to go to school someplace. 90% of them qualified to go to the school they wanted to go to. And, Rachel is at the University of Chicago. You don't get into University of Chicago unless you got the goods. And she did. We got George Washington, by the way. make that connection. So she had the profile to get into that school. And that's what I think we're trying to provide each of the students. This year's class, we're already seeing phenomenal things. I don't want to put Ken on the spot, but he's got a son who got an option to go to 2 places to do engineering, aerospace.
And Huntsville.
Yeah. So he's getting what he needs as well.
Right.
So when we look at student per student, we're able, as the culture that we have, to determine what else does this student need. When they need a little bit of test prep, we provide it. We have a great young counselor named Sean Connor, who is this year doing really cool things with the kids. We've got teachers who take their time to offer ACT and SAT prep outside of the window, and with kids who come to that. So while I guess the best way to describe it is we all have to take the test to get our driver's license. So you gotta study that and you gotta know what the test is. But the real measure of us being successful drivers is what we get to do after we get that. And while both my boys failed parallel parking the first time, they're both good drivers now, thank God. But that was not a measure of them as students. That was a measure of they didn't know how to parallel park. And so we intervened and we taught them how to do parallel
And
parking.
they practiced.
Exactly. So, but what I'm really excited about as a whole is when you look at both the middle school and the high school, the results we're getting without focusing on testing. Our middle school kids will see the structure of the test. We didn't know about the on-demand writing. We didn't really know how to set that up. But in terms of doing multiple choice questions, in terms of being able to do short response questions, our kids were prepared. And you can see that in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade scores. So while, again, there is room for improvement, and we definitely want to improve, I think these test scores say far more about what we're doing right than anything else.
And I mean, my son loves it here, and you guys do a great job with him, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate this because this is helpful to me, because as a parent, and just being in certain areas of Charleston, I think there is a little bit of a messaging challenge in that, in terms of, you know, who we are and how we're different from Wando, from School of the Arts, from Academic Magnet, all great places for their own reasons. This is helping me at least get a little better picture of that, because, you know, I'm of the opinion of, you put the Academic Magnet up there, and, you know, why can't we get those kids? Yeah. And I think, to me, it's a matter of how we approach it, so we get them in the door to see the environment here.
And we're getting that. That's one of the other things you can't see on a regular basis. There are kids who are going to go to Academic Magnet. There are kids who are going to go to the governor's school. And to be honest, I'm excited for them when they do, because that's a pathway that they and their family see as the right choice. But we've got 705 people on our candidate list who want to be here next year. We're going to have 120-something slots. That ratio is the best ratio in any place I've ever been in terms of the number of students. Now, we don't get to select those, so whatever the lottery ends up being, that's the group of kids we have.
But we do get to clarify the message.
Exactly.
So that the parents get to make a better decision.
Exactly.
For their child, so that they know that this may not be the right place for them.
And I'm curious, David, when you were looking for Ethan and when you heard the message, did you know coming in the rigor? Did you know you chose that rigor, or did we need to give you more information on the front end? Because he's doing great, but
Well, my view was that, just what the name says, this was a gifted and talented school. And when I heard that, there was no ceiling. I mean, there was no allocution analogy. I mean, I went to Boston College, and we're not Alabama in football, right? You know? But, you know, I think that it's that kind of thing. I didn't see the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't hear that message. And so my concern for me as a parent is, you know, because I've been out there. I've been out to the schools that are in Mount Pleasant where I live, who, you know, in the SAIL programs and things like that. And sometimes the message that I hear is that that's a school for kids who are bright kids who have some social problems. And, okay, if that's what PSA, if we want to become that, that's not sort of what I see it as, it's not sort of what I thought it as. I certainly am not somebody who thinks that we want to just get the kids because of their test scores. There's so many different ways kids are gifted and talented. I love the way the teachers, you know, talk to my kid like he's an adult and he feels so comfortable in the environment. You know, but so that's the kind of message I think that if we got out more, it might help us with the pool of kids. You probably see it in the trending data as you get more reviews, you get those kinds of numbers, right? That we're now getting maybe more advanced kids.
We're getting everybody at this point across the spectrum. Well, just a couple anecdotes. I mean, I went and my doctor who gave me my shot for epidural shot knew about our school and we were talking about it. My family doctor, she knows everything about our school. And the guy who sold me my house knows everything about our school. I go to things in the ponds, and we went to something the other day. 2 parents come up and talk to me about the opportunity. I'm walking through the grocery store with a PSA shirt on, and a couple stops me. I heard about your school. So the word is getting out there. I don't believe I'm an anomaly that those questions are happening. So I think we're becoming the school that we always hope for. And I have to be honest, I'm really excited that we're a school for kids who are socially awkward, because those kids need a school too. But they're not the majority of our kids, if you will, but they are just as important as anybody in our school. And so that culture is a very inclusive culture, given the caveat, you gotta come in and you wanna have a rigorous curriculum. And there are kids who wanna be here, but are not able to be here at the level because they're not accelerated. They haven't had the opportunity to be accelerated maybe, but more often than not, there are kids who just don't need an accelerated curriculum. We try to preach that on the front end, but every parent, and sometimes we choose things as parents because we don't have a lot of other options. And I think that's something else that people are beginning to share with me, is where they are, if they don't have access to an academic magnet, or they don't have access to the Mount Pleasant schools, or whatever, they see us as the one thing that really is bright and shining for them, and they're going after it. And come February 17th, when we have to tell 67 to 80% of the people and things you can't get in, that's going to be painful.
What a great problem to have. I remember when we were on the phone calling,
Yes.
trying to get those seats filled.
I absolutely, and that says so much about you all, is the foresight and the vision to create something without knowing what it's going to look like.
Well, we're here not to condemn or have anything that you need to be defensive about. It's, you're always striving to be better and what else we can do and how we look at our resources and how we work together as a board and a principal and a faculty to continuously improve what we provide this school. So that's why we're looking at this data, and we need to develop our data dashboard. And you're right, it's not just about the numbers. There's a lot of quality indicators that we need to look at together. And everybody should know what we're looking at and striving for. And now we have additional resources too to get some additional input on those. And we should be getting our parents and our faculty and our kids input on what this is. So we're all together looking at that. That's something that we constantly do. That's our responsibilities.
Definitely.
And survey results too, we need to get more of those, and develop those. We have some parents that wanna work with us on it. And I see in here too, the evaluation by teachers, students, and parents in the high school. There's 21 teachers, but 100% of them are satisfied with the school-home relations. And 18 parents were certified, and 67% of them were satisfied. Those are kind of things too, I guess I'm sure when your red flag, you think, what is that?
Exactly.
What can we do better, and again, what does that number mean?
Exactly.
So those are the types of things we need to do together as a team,
Sure.
all of us, so.
So is it reasonable to think that we would have maybe a plan, to address these issues from you in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah. And, the Academic Excellence Committee is one avenue for that, we need to, have a new chair of that and a group, so, we have a meeting in several weeks, our regular meeting, this is a specially called meeting. So if, y'all would be thinking about that, about the Academic Excellence Committee, that could be the best place to start that work. And it's a platform where we can get, parents and teachers and board members working with you, Dr. Guy, to start looking at. You gonna volunteer for that? We already got a volunteer? Yeah, Victoria too.
And Victoria, okay, good.
Yeah. Good, okay, Coach, thank you.
The only thing I would say that I would offer when we do this planning, if we make the plans so huge and we cover huge areas, it's unattainable. It has to be very focused and it has to be out years so that you build as you go.
Okay. How many? Is Davis coming back?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7, okay, we gotta go. The phone's not fine, it's not working.
Will the cell phone work?
Yeah, if somebody wants to, I think he dropped off. I couldn't get it to work.
I get those.
Yeah, the signal's not good in here, and I think that's, we'll have to
It
figure out.
fell off the direct line?
No, I called it back and then it got stuck in a Muzak.
Maybe we need to find a new.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Well, we can certainly try to find one that has better cell service.
Yeah.
But the phone, unless Comcast is, we're having some issues with that. But you want me to try to dial it one more time?
I tried it a couple of times while you were talking, I think he gave up.
Okay.
I text him, and it doesn't text well in here either.
No,
It's
nothing.
probably a good thing.
We get one bar.
Yeah, it's not, so,
We're having several
Yeah.
issues right now with the linkage with Comcast, so.
so also you have the annual plan data. Annual plan data too.
So we had a meeting, that wasn't necessarily a board meeting, but all were welcome to come in December on the annual report. Now, the annual report is what it says at the end of every December. It's due to the state, just asking for a narrative of the school, asking for information about the board, asking for information about teachers. And then there is a place to analyze your data. And then there is also then a place to describe what strategies that you're going to do to address the issues. So that report was sent out to everybody in late December. Sent it to Courtney Mills, who is our liaison right now at the district level. She is kind of in charge of all things reports and assessment. She reports to Robbie Compton. So this was, I guess, probably about 15-page document that has, again, a wide variety of pieces to it. So if you all have any questions on any of it, I'll be glad to address those again.
Annual.
That's the report that was sent out in December.
That's so long ago.
And list a station and, had the list of teachers and their certification and all that.
We were within certification,
Yes.
guidelines at that point, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there is some concern about this coming year, and I've been dealing with Courtney and Robbie on that as well. We have until May for folks to complete, because it's always at the end of the school year. So we have 4 individuals who moved to the state. And to address the question that was asked earlier about the ADEPT, all of our teachers who are South Carolina certified have been through the ADEPT process. The teachers that are not ADEPT, like for instance, Dr. Mosley, who has a PhD, we do the growth plan, and this year we're dealing with things called SLOs, student learning outcomes, objectives. The word's been switched back and forth. And so all of our teachers are responsible for those. Our 4 who are going to be an adept cannot be an adept until they officially have a South Carolina certificate. So there's 2 options. With reciprocity, which I'm glad I can say that word all of a sudden, the teachers who've only had 1 to 2 years experience will get an initial certificate and have to go through the entire adept process, which is minimally a 2-year process. They do a 1 year of induction, and then they do 1 year then of what's called safety, which I don't even remember what that stands for, other than that's the official evaluative year. And then after that, then they move into what's called the GBE, or growth-based evaluation. Once they get that certificate, then they're eligible to be in the program. The second option is that if they've had 5 to 6 years or anything really above 3 years experience, then they're eligible for what's called a professional certificate. And that requires 1 semester of an adept type assessment. So once they get that, then they complete the 1 semester, and then they're fully South Carolina certified. So we've got 3 that would, once they get their out-of-state certificate, then of those 3, 1 of them has more than 4 years experience and the other 2 do not. So we'll have 2 that go into initial and then the other one beyond. We also have a young man who graduated from college in Charleston. He has to get his initial certificate from the state, and once he gets that, then he is, which is just really just a procedure, nothing more. Then he starts that process as well. But all 4 of them could be certified by the end of May, and they're all working on it. But dealing with the state is always interesting. But I think everybody's on target. It's just a matter of the waiting game. They gotta get their fingerprints got to be turned in. They pay their fee. They fill out all the paperwork, and then whoever at the certification office deals with that. So
If by the end of the year, those 4 get their certification, will we be under the 25% state law?
Robbie and I did the calculations, and he thinks yes. And part of it is not just a matter of whether they're certified or not, it's whether they're teaching the courses that are in that area. For instance, we have a teacher who is certified in math, but he's also teaching psychology. That shouldn't be a major big deal, other than when they go through, I'm not exactly sure because I've never seen the formula, how they determine, all right, this person is teaching completely this, and some of the classes that they might teach don't actually qualify for the formula because they're outside of the core content. So it's still a little bit more mysterious to me, but the answer to your question, Stacy, is that if these 4 come through, in terms of the percentage of teachers, we should be fine.
We'll be at 25 or below?
Yes, and we're dancing on the edge right now. We're 1% under with this past year. And,
But we're at 40% right now without the teachers certified.
I'm not sure the exact percentage, but yes, 35% is what I thought I saw, but we're looking at, again, that shift of 10% of 25 people is 2.5 people. So when we can shift 4 people over, we should be fine. And going forward, I know now what I didn't know before was that and this is my fault, but there are 3 levels. Somebody's certified, someone is eligible to teach, and then there are those who don't meet that category. The eligible to teach, I thought was highly qualified. For instance, Dr. Mosley and Dr. McAllister, I thought they fit in that 75%, but they don't.
They're the 25.
Yeah. So that's where this past year, when I went through the hiring process, I wasn't assuming that they were causing me any problems. Find out come September when we start looking at that was an issue. However, again, Robbie and Courtney are not concerned about it at all. So that's good news, but we don't even have to deal with it if I get these 4 people.
And I just think going forward, we recognize that we got 75% of them that have to be state certified, and then you can play with that 25%. But if you're already there, then you can't hire more.
Exactly.
Because I understand all these are new hires.
All the folks that are causing the problem, new hires.
Yeah. So just, please be cognizant of that.
I can tell you that
'Cause it
I'm
is
as
a-
cognizant as ever.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
And the state stated very clearly when they wrote the charter legislation, legislators expect those numbers to be there because as a rule, state public schools have to have certified teachers.
Sure.
But
these folks are certified, they're just not South Carolina certified.
They gotta be South Carolina certified. And,
Yeah.
and the state's gone to a lot of measures to make sure that there are roads where, individuals from outside of South Carolina can get certified. It's still got to take some coursework, still have to jump through some hoops.
Right.
But it can happen, but they need
Tim,
to.
have they sent their certification from whatever state they're in to the State Department?
Yes.
Have they done their paperwork?
Yes.
Okay, then I would push that to make sure that they have, because even if you substitute in the state, if you're certified, you get more money.
Yes.
If you are not, even you get half the money.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There
it's really important.
So there is meaning and value in doing it, and most of them have to do it, so. I don't think, to be honest, Dr. Mosley and Dr. McAllister are never going to get their certification.
And that's why you've got that 25%
That's right.
to
Right.
work with, because they are experts in their field, and absolutely these students will benefit from some of that.
And even experts still need to grow.
Oh,
They
yes.
need to learn more. So, they can't be like stuck, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm here, I'm not gonna rise to this plateau, when in fact, you're always rising. So they also need to work on something, some sort of professional development,
Sure.
something, just
I mean, you
just
could
something.
even ask them to go through it. You, as the principal, could put them through those paces and those steps. It's there for a purpose. It's wonderful training for anybody, or at least get them on a growth plan.
Well, they all are on a growth.
Okay, well, that's good.
So they, on the growth plan, do they have a certified teacher sort of working with them on campus?
I know, because again, they're outstanding teachers. I would have them working with most of my certified
Well,
folks.
I don't know. Now, I probably take exception to that because a teacher is taught how to teach, how to present material, how to assess it, and how to practice it. There are certain steps. So just an expert in the field doesn't give you that.
But I'm not
Not at
saying
all.
they're just an expert in the field, they're expert teachers. When I go in their classroom, they're
that's a
doing the
different
things
thing.
that they should be doing.
That's good to hear. Very good.
Any other questions for Dr. Gar? So you'll just keep us abreast of how we're doing, especially this coming year?
Every time I get one of those certificates in, I'll send you on.
Good.
Yeah, and you can give us an update too when you decide who you want to hire, what our percentage is.
Sure.
Okay. You want to, on the agenda to vote is whether we should increase our sixth grade to 96. And Dr. Gott sent us an executive summary. Those were, the financial impact of that is positive, what you indicated. But as you discussed earlier today, it's not always the numbers of the quantity for the money, it's the quality. Can you discuss how you think quality, and if you've done any looking in with teachers and the students about
Sure.
the impact of that decision?
Well, this year, the class of sixth graders is 96. So we've learned about their interactions and their flow as well. And to be honest, if you could just have 24 sixth graders, it would be a better situation for those 24. And my feeling is that the vast majority of what we did with 72 is carried over to the 96. We've had new staff this year, and I would have to say that some of the instruction, it was not at the same level as it was a year ago when Paula McPhee was here, because she was a master teacher. But I don't think our students are being hurt by the teachers we have at all. I just, what's good and what's great and what's excellent. We're dancing on the great side with some of them and moving several into excellent. With that, because of that, when we go to the next number, we're going to have to hire 3 or 4 more teachers overall. So that's the risk. And so I want to address that. That is the risk. But one of the things we found in this new building is that the culture is changing, and that's to be expected. But what I found was pretty interesting is that when we're in full session, this school feels empty. There's space, there's opportunity. When the sixth graders are in their wing, they're in their wing for almost most of the day. Now they go out for electives and they go out for science. So the high school and the middle school groups are not interacting as much really as they did previously. So I think there had been a concern about, are we minimizing the high school experience? And I think 2-3 years ago it was minimized because the numbers were small compared to big numbers in middle school. But that shift has already begun to take place. Next year, our 9th grade and our 10th grade will be full house. And our seniors will double, and our juniors will be right behind them on that. So the high school experience has its own strength now. That is, again, growing, and we'll be curious to see what it looks like. So as we bring 96 up, we're going to see that the middle school eventually is going to have close to 300. But those same group of kids are going to be moving up, for the most part, up into the upper levels too. We're creating that pipeline. And in one sense, you mentioned something, Dave, about we want to keep the academic magnet kids, the kids that might be interested in that, staying here. We're going to lose a couple this year to academic magnet. We're going to lose a couple to governor's school. But I talked with a couple of them, and they're really struggling. They don't know if they want to do that or not, because there is something special for them here. But you've got to pursue it. You got to have that, partly they want to know that they could, and then they get a choice. And I'm glad at this point that the kids feel like it's a much more difficult choice than it would have been a couple of years ago. So there is nothing that is 100%. So if we go to 96, it will have an impact on some things. But I think on the overall, and I don't want to undersell or oversell the financial part, but that additional revenue will take care of a lot of concerns that we have for the building. Talking about paying our house payment, right now, if we had less than what we projected, we'd be in trouble. If we get where we projected without the 96, we're okay, but we're going to be tight. When we go to this number, it will get us up to that number that we've been projecting, the 504, we'll be knocking at the door of that because we will have filled in a lot of slots. So that's the question, and we've got, what really concerns me, and I think really actually provides us with a seed for thought here real soon. We could start another school right now with the 705 that are wanting to get in here. And so when we only take 100 of those, there's still 600 kids that want an option. So while we can meet 24 more needs by opening those slots, we need to start thinking a year or 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But those decisions have to start now, because whenever we start that ball rolling, just add 2 years to it. And how many more kids will we not be able to reach? So do we go after more land here? Do we go after building another campus someplace in the city so that we're beginning to meet regional needs? And so over the weekend at the STEM Festival, the James Island and Johns Island folks who are at Cooper School, I think is the name of it. It's a elementary K through 5 on the island, and they're real excited about our program, and they've got several kids applying. But it's hard to get to here from Johns Island and James Island. It's hard to get here from Mount Pleasant and Wando area. So there is going to be some really good questions to ask very soon.
I think the decision-making process needs to be more in-depth and have more time to make a big decision. Like you said, the decisions we make today impact years to come.
Yes.
So we'd like to work with you to have a more structured process for when we have to make decisions like this.
Yeah.
And again, the Academic Excellence Committee is one. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues to look at this.
Sure.
And those other decisions that you were talking about that we've been thinking about too.
Yeah.
Additional land. It's not good for a board to have to decide a decision like this in 1 month or one meeting.
But we've been talking about this for at least 6 or 7 months. Now, not everybody evidently, but this is something that
It hasn't been brought to this board until last time.
December, actually.
We haven't had an analysis process that we need to develop to really thoroughly analyze everything, not just from a financial standpoint, but all those different prisms. And you get impact analysis with our colleagues too on school culture. You're expert on that too, but there are also, it's nice to get different perspective.
Sure.
Tim, the other thing is the feds have $30 million out there right now. So, I mean, it won't always be there, but it wasn't there when we started 5 years ago. And now it is, so that makes it even more timely, if you're really serious.
And I think we have to be. I think that's something, and again, I think Stacy's point is well taken. We've got to be talking about it now, because the decision that we need to make should be made next year or 2 years from now, or maybe we can do it in 1 year. But there is, if we're not discussing it, we're going to be farther and farther behind. And yes, we can settle in at being 504 here and have a wonderful experience, and I'm okay with that. But there's a part of me that looks at the other 3,000, if we use that same ratio, that there's a need out there. Can we meet that need? Should we meet that need? And that's, I guess, the question we need to ask.
That's right.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for the small school climate, I really do. I think that's, if you ask parents, and I'm a parent, my son is much older, but that makes a huge difference. It really does. So when you lose that small field where these kids, they didn't fit in all the time at the bigger schools, and that's why they are. That's not, I don't want to, paint it with a broad brush, but sometimes that's why they are so successful in a smaller school, because they do feel like the teacher knows who they are, and the principal knows their name when they walk down the hallway. That matters, and it makes a big difference in how how they do everything, whether they test well, and how they're performing in classes, and everything that they do. So I just, personally hate to lose that small school personal feel for the students, regardless of where you might go, later on. But right now, I think that's really important, and I think the success of the school is pretty much dependent upon
Keeping that culture.
Keeping that, exactly.
That's our signature. That's how we're unique and special. Urban gifted minds and things.
Exactly.
Well, is there any questions for Dr. Gott on this question?
You're talking about
That is an action item. Do we want to decide that now, or do you want to
Could we-
postpone it?
I wonder, do we have time to get some input from our guest who spoke to us today?
I made an offer to contact, Stacy had asked me, I have a colleague, Dr. Tim Maybear, at the University of South Carolina. So all I did was send him exactly your lead. And this is what Dr. Tom Maybear said. I think that growing your own makes perfect sense. A positive middle school experience will enable the academy to retain students for high school. If parents remain happy and a culture of family evolves at PSA, I would see the increase of 24 sixth graders as supporting the long-range development of the high school program. And if you're going to make this decision, you need to make it so that we can tell parents that there's going to be a spot for them to start with. So
Well,
it's
that's-
pretty timely.
That's an option.
Yeah.
We could vote tonight to approve it, or we can also decide to analyze it from the other aspects if you want. And we can tell the parents that we'll make a decision in the next month or two, the 24 until the 24. Or we can make a decision tonight.
Can I ask one more question, please? Do we have any applicants for grades for students in the upper grades?
Yes, we have 350 out of that 700 for sixth grade. We have 158 to 160 for ninth grade. And then things like 60 and 70 for seventh and eighth. We've got about 10 or 15 at each of the 10th and 11th. And as far as I know, there were no 12th. So we're looking at, a very packed class in ninth grade again. We already have a full house 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then this present group of ninth graders is rolling up to 10th. So we're gonna see basically the school that we were hoping for in terms of 6 through 10, full house. And then our juniors and our seniors are again doubling what they've been. And I think that's a good number for them.
I'm fine with going out.
I'm fine with voting. I think we need to be decisive. I don't think parents need to dangle on. Is there not a spot for me? It seems to me.
I know, I talked to a lot of people Saturday at the STEM Festival. I talked to a couple of the folks from Orange Grove. I know they're expanding this year. They're going up, they're expanding 6 to 10. So these other schools are out there and they can be creaming away things because Orange Grove is a good school.
Yeah.
They can be taken away from what we do and what we want to look for. So
Well, if we do this, we're gonna have to go back also to the district to increase our number from 504. I talked to them about it. We can do it through a board approval, through their board approval, to get up to the 550 range, because as those classes go up, and we're committed to those other kids too.
Right.
So I think the highest we can get in a year is about 550 without starting to sardine, and we don't wanna do that.
Right, I don't want to be packed. And I think that's the issue that we're gonna have to face. We've got this rest of this semester. Next year, we'll actually be very comfortable in the building. But next year, it'll get tight. And after that, so that's why we have to start looking at, do we buy land behind us here, get land and build, a middle school campus and a high school campus, which is one option. Or do we, again, build someplace else and have 2 smaller schools than 1 big one? And that, I think Shirley's point is well taken. My experience is that 450 around a particular middle school or high school is the right number. But when you look at having both of them together, then I think you can go up, because you're looking at 300 for middle school and ultimately 250 or so for high school. You're still keeping that ratio that's appropriate. I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the tipping point about this 150 students. If you have more than 150 students at any grade level, they don't get to know each other. So the 100 still keeps us in that range. And I think, and it may be really important to, assess our students in the 6th grade. But as far as I can tell, and I know I have a 6th grade parent over here, she might have an opinion on that, but I think we can maintain the culture with that number of kids.
Well, we could do some analysis too, get some input from the kids and the parents too as we do that. Well, I think I hear, is there a motion to approve the 6th grade?
So moved.
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any nays? Okay. We had a personnel issue to discuss, but I suggest, since we're getting late in the hour and our brains are tired, and our bodies probably too, I don't know why, that we postpone that to our regular board meeting. Is that acceptable to everyone? Someone say.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, is that right?
Plus it's raining.
Second.
Second. That's good, okay.
All in favor?
All right.
Great. Thank you.